Can you really buy properties here in Medellin, Colombia for 50% discount or 50% off the asking price if you are a cash buyer? Now, I saw this posted up on one of the Facebook expat groups. Basically, someone was saying the best way to buy properties in Colombia is to actually go up to the buildings where you want to buy in the areas you do want to live and talk to the porteros, talk to the security guard or the doorman, ask them if anyone in the building is selling their properties, yada, yada, yada. And he said this is a better way to buy properties compared to looking online or looking at advertisements that people post in windows. And he then said you can secure 50% discounts on properties by purchasing them that way. So basically off-market deals, speaking to people directly. And it's an interesting one, and it kind of drew up quite a lot of discussion on Facebook. And I think there are two sides to this. But before we get into that, there are basically two questions that need to be answered. If you did secure that discount, is it actually a 50% discount on the asking price, or are properties in Medellin overvalued by 50%? And these questions are really difficult to answer. Now, I'll be honest with you, my first reaction to seeing this guy's post was, if I had a property worth 500 million pesos, let's say, why would I sell that property to someone at a 50% discount if I knew it was worth 500,000 pesos? Now, it's just like in London, just like in the US, you could potentially be open to taking a hit on that 500 million peso price for speed, for general ease, yada, 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 but not 50%. If you own something which is worth X, then why would you sell it to someone for X minus 50%? It just doesn't really make sense. But because there is no Zillow, there's no Rightmove, there's basically no central database of previously sold prices here in Colombia for properties, it makes it almost impossible to realize and understand the true value of something. And so with that, the property game is a bit of a minefield here, because you do get property owners basically trying their luck in the hope that someone naive comes along, they haven't done their research, they just buy the property, they don't do their due diligence, the owner wins because they've just sold their property at massively over the value, and then the buyer, probably usually a foreigner who hasn't been informed well or hasn't had the right support around him, has basically overpaid for the property. This is especially apparent in Medellin because of the kind of gringo culture here, because that Medellin has been put on the map in the last 5 or 10 years. A high influx of foreigners, usually from the United States or developed countries. A lot of local property owners will be trying their luck here in Medellin way more compared to other regions in Colombia, simply in the hope that someone naive comes along and buys the property. And if you just compare that to my property journey, I feel like I got a fair price for the apartment I bought, and I've had this kind of confirmed with a few different people. But on the video I posted about it, I had everyone in the comments saying, no, you overpaid by 50%. It should have been like 300,000 pesos, 400,000 pesos. And maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, that would have been right. But a lot of people love to have opinions, especially on properties, on what they're worth or what they think they're worth, or whether or not people have overpaid for them or not. But what is interesting is, even though normal people, you and I, do not have access to previously sold properties, previously sold plots of land, etc., developers in Colombia who are buying land, who are creating buildings, who are selling units, who are doing all of that stuff, of which there are a lot of, do tend to have more access to previously sold property prices in the region. And so you can be fairly confident that when a new development gets put up, like a new project, the developer of that project will price their apartments, their units, accordingly at the market rate, because they have better access to things that we do. They actually know what things are selling for. They do it as a job, etc. So if you look at the new construction units of what they're actually getting listed at, and they tend to kind of sell within, let's say, 5 or 10% of that listing price, then you get like a good idea of what units and what apartments are actually worth. And if you do look at the actual specific cost of those new build apartments, they are super expensive. My apartment is 117,000 square foot. If that had all the amenities of a new project, and let's say it was completely refurbished and everything, it would be well north of 1 billion pesos. And so then for people to say that that kind of apartment should be worth kind of 300,000 or even 400,000 is absolutely ridiculous. And so that tends to be a good anchor of pricing what developers are selling their units at here in Colombia, because they basically just have access to more information than you and I, and so their units are going to be priced accordingly. And so just going back to the original point, yes, I do believe that you will be able to secure discounts by going to people directly, because they don't have to pay the agent, they don't have to have the hassle. You're a good buyer, you have cash, you know the deal, it's all going to be done very smoothly and quickly. So you may be able to negotiate, let's say 5 or 10% or maybe even 15% off the asking price. The same as London, it's the same as in New York, it's the same as buying properties in LA. But to secure 50% discounts on the property value, unless the owner is really desperate to sell like today and they need the money today, then you're just not going to be able to buy assets at 50% of their true value, because why would any seller leave 50% off the table? They could leave 10% off the table for a really quick deal and for kind of ease of access of money, but you're not going to be able to buy a $200,000 property in Colombia for $100,000, because why would that seller sell it to you? And because the vast majority of properties in Colombia are unmortgaged, I think only 4% of properties have mortgages on them, people aren't in a hurry to sell like they are in developed countries, and people are more likely to just sit on that asset and wait for the right price to come along. So I personally don't think you're able to secure 50% discounts on properties in Colombia, although I will say if I had a time travel machine and I was able to buy my property again, I would follow the first part of that person's advice, which would be to walk around the areas that I like, go into buildings, speak to the portero, speak to the caretaker, speak to the doorman, ask him, hey, is anyone in the building selling their properties? I'm really interested, blah, blah, blah. I would have actually done that. That is a really good piece of advice. So if any of you are watching this and you want to buy a property in Colombia, I'm not trying to sell you a course or anything like that, and this is not financial advice. This is what I would do. I would go into all of the buildings where I want to buy it, all the areas I would like, speak to the portero, see if anyone's selling their properties, set up conversations, yada, 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 and I would try and buy properties that way and bypass a local agent. That is the one piece of advice I would actually take on board from what that guy said online. But are you going to be able to negotiate a 50% off deal doing that, like buying a 1 billion peso apartment for 500,000? No, unless there's something wrong with the owner, like they really need to sell tomorrow or whatever. It's just not going to happen, and that's just wishful thinking. And also, someone also told me a great piece of advice. They said properties in Colombia never go down in value. They'll always go up, but just some years they'll go up a little bit slower than other years. And so guys, hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.